This is the Dallas Morning News.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my old pals Evan Grant and David Moore. Fellas, it's the day after just another rollicking good time out at Jerry World, where the Cowboys got drilled 34-10. 34-10. I got to tell you, David, it's like this franchise every game figures out some new way to embarrass itself, starting with the roof falling in out there, which I guess it goes back to the thing that Jerry never wants to open the roof, and maybe this is why he's afraid of what might happen when he does.
Well, you're certainly right. In this 3-7 season, there seems to be a different comedic pratfall every week that symbolizes the loss. This one was what I was told. It was actually the metal casing for a cable, one of the cable systems up top on the roof that came down. There were no casualties on the field other than the Cowboys' reputation once again. They say, look, they open and close it all the time, and the excessive wind did this and blah, blah. But the point is, they rarely open the roof there. Their intent was to open it last night to enjoy a beautiful fall evening, and they couldn't even accomplish that. So 8 days after the sun was a factor, they were unable to open the roof to allow any natural moonlight into the stadium.
I think you guys are all missing the boat here. I mean, it is karma from the very top. Last week, God was sending a message. It's curtains for the Cowboys. This week, he doesn't want to watch the game, and the roof is literally falling in. We don't need to go any further. This is the Cowboys' season.
It's the karma Cowboys.
And why was there a hole in Texas Stadium so God could watch his team? Well, today he said, no, I'm good. Close it back up.
That's right.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
Well, this is just a phenomenal thing to watch happen. And, it's the easy thing. And I get emails from readers, and, there's a couple in particular just want me to bang on Jerry, every day. And I said, listen, he's been
that'll result in change at the top.
Yeah. He's been a punchline of more of my columns than any single person alive. And why that isn't enough, I don't know. And like as David said, it's not going to change anything. He's going to remain the GM and owner until the day he dies. And so none of that will happen. But I will have to say, David, the thing that is stunning to me about this is that we all questioned what the Cowboys did going into this season because the lack of action, right, and replacing certain players, and those were especially in the running game, and they're not having a running back. But when you look at that loss to the Texans, they gave up 34 points to the Texans. This was a team that was starting to struggle on offense, and they come in here and they just move right down the field. It could have been worse than 34 points. They gave up.
They scored twice in the first 150 seconds, but only one counted.
Yes, exactly.
I was going to say, we're not counting the touchdown, the first play touchdown that got wiped off.
The very first play, Nico Collins, nobody touched him. He went 77 yards on the first play of the game, and no one touched him.
And Joe Mixon is bouncing outside, and there's no one out there. No one. I mean,
David, I would say this, right? Last night, I don't want to get into all the cutting-edge details of print journalism because I know people love print journalism. But look, I mean, at 4:30, you have the roof falling in. The first play of the game goes for a touchdown.
Yeah.
The first two plays of the games get called back for whistles. It was just like, I don't think you needed to worry about the rest of the game. Your whole story was right there. This is the Cowboys, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I mean, it was. And just like the Sun the week before, that, there is a continuing source of irritation for Cowboys fans through the years that rears its head in some way, shape, or form every game. And now you have that. And look, I don't know when the team extricates itself from this losing streak. I did some numbers last night. We can talk about this as the segment goes along, but this is getting in some uncharted territory here, what we're seeing.
So, David, let me ask you that then, because this is the point I was making earlier, is that, going into the season, yes, we knew there were shortcomings and things they didn't do. Yeah. But this is a team that won 12 games.
Not to this extent. Not to this extent.
And there was no way to expect this. So after the game, of course, Jerry Jones is asked, whether Mike McCarthy has lost, the locker room. And of course, that has always been the first cause to fire a guy, right? As soon as he loses the locker room, that's it. It's over. You're out. And you could make the case, shouldn't the Cowboys do that now? Because clearly, I don't see this team beating anybody but the Giants the rest of the way out. This looks like a 5-win team at best.
So you've already given Carolina that win, huh?
I've already given Carolina
the Panthers
that win.
Are clearly a better team at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to argue at the moment.
It is. So let's say that's going to happen, and that's what it certainly looks like at this point. I know Jerry doesn't like to fire coaches in the middle of a season. He only did that with Wade Phillips because he had Jason Garrett on hand. We've talked about that before. There is no one on this staff that would be a logical successor at this point. So what I want to ask you, David, is the Cowboys are losing, but are they lost? Is this a team that has lost faith in its coaching staff, and how does that reflect itself? In other words, sometimes you can tell when guys have quit. They're just not trying anymore. McCarthy always talks about the effort of these guys, but at some point, have they lost their confidence? Have they lost their ability to execute a play? It just feels like that no one's confident of anything on the field.
They've clearly lost their confidence. There's no question about that. And I do think they're playing hard, but I think when you get in a stretch like this, where you go into that game last night, to me, this played out a lot like the Philadelphia game, where they made some plays early in the game. They were actually competitive for a half and going into the third quarter. And in this game, they actually extended it a little longer. They got out of the third quarter, and it was still a competitive game on the scoreboard. So if you're looking for minimal progress, I guess I would point to that. But what happens is, as the game wears along, they just don't have the talent to hang in there, and the other team's superior talent, plays through. And I think when teams get in this stretch, like early in the game, Jake Ferguson out with a concussion, didn't return. When you're in a stretch like this and you've lost a lot of key players and you lose another one, you start to go, okay, here we go again. Look, there's only so much we can do. This is out of our control. Now, is that not playing hard? Is that giving up? Or is that just the harsh reality of your situation setting in? And then you look up in the second half, and as I said, they didn't look good, but at least the score was close. Cooper Rush wasn't sacked in the first half. Well, he was sacked 5 times in the second half. Why was that? Well, Zach Martin, Tyler Smith, and Tyler Guyton were all injured and were unable to finish the game. So you lost 3 starting offensive linemen and your starting tight end from what you started the game with. And at some point, that number of personnel losses, I don't see how it wouldn't wear on you and your belief that you have what it takes to win a game. So I think that's what you're seeing. The other issue is, okay, remove Mike McCarthy from the situation, and who takes over? All these coaches are in the final year of their contract. No phase of the game has performed to where you would turn it over to that coordinator and go, well, you're the least of our problems, so go ahead and take us to the end here. And when a team hits a stretch like this, I think it's natural to say, well, it couldn't get worse, so turn it over to somebody else. Really? It couldn't get worse? I think this thing could still get worse.
Yeah, it's getting worse. So let's look at the numbers.
I don't think it can
up.
get worse. I don't think it can get worse. I mean,
it'll get worse because you keep piling up losses. That's how it gets worse.
If you keep piling up losses, you're only going to go up in draft standings. And at this point, look, the things that for me stand out and have been an issue, really throughout the tenure, I feel like, of Mike McCarthy's time here, the penalties just infuriate me. And that to me is a clear sign of discipline.
They lead the league in penalties since 2020, since he got here.
Yes. A secondary thing, like last night we heard, on the interception in the end zone, Troy Aikman's comment on the routes was, I don't know what was going on there. And we've talked a little bit about this all year, that players are not running disciplined routes. They're just not running smart routes. And that to me comes back to, if coaching can't reinforce that, then that is an issue. And look, the number of undisciplined actions, the unsportsmanlikes last night, late in that game. I know it's a frustrating game and I know it's a frustrating loss, but it just feels like this team has lost all discipline. I don't know that that's a reflection on Mike McCarthy. I think it's probably a reflection more on the players, but I don't know what can get worse for the Cowboys this year.
Well, I mean, just more of it. But let me just talk about this receiver thing, because this has long been a bone of contention with me and receivers in general and running routes. If you look at the Kevontae Turpin touchdown, and I'm not a big fan of him playing out there a lot because he's just too little. He gets mauled by defensive backs out there. You have to get him in the right play, the right scheme. But he takes a step to his right, a very quick step off of the line. The DB bites on that, and then he crosses over and goes back to his left. He loses that guy the minute the route starts. There is not nearly enough of that kind of thing on this team. If you watch these guys run routes, they run down and circle around and come back to a stop. This is the easiest thing in the world for a defensive back to read. And I think that is the issue. It's one of two things has to happen here. Either you've got to get guys who run better routes, or simply are sharper in their routes. They're more decisive, like Amari Cooper was, and we've talked about that before, why he was so good for Dak Prescott and why has had so much success in the league is because of the routes that he runs. Or you're going to have to scheme things to get these guys open, where it's going to be more of like coming very close to setting picks, right? Of course, you can't do that. It's illegal, but you can come close to it. You can run these little rub routes and things that get these guys open. But as Troy Aikman also said during the game, they're simply not open. And when the guys are not open, it makes it very difficult for the quarterback to get the ball to them. And if your quarterback is either, in Dak's case, not an entirely accurate guy, he gets the ball in the vicinity, he's just not a guy who hits a tight window very often, or a Cooper Rush who's throwing the ball, who's throwing like a 65-mile-an-hour fastball. Yeah. He just doesn't have the arm strength to do it. Then you're just cooked.
I will say I think a lot of the issue on the underneath routes, and you're primarily seeing underneath routes because the offensive line can't protect long enough for the quarterback to go down the field, is that these defenses just don't respect the running game, and so they put an extra defender back in the passing. You talked all the time about, with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Dorsett and Emmitt Smith, you'd always have to put in 8 and 9 man boxes to stop the run. Well, you're seeing the opposite of that now. The teams are going, we don't need to put an extra defender down there to stop the run. We'll use that to create more trash and garbage for the receivers to go through. So I think that's a bigger issue with the receivers right now than their route running. Although I understand completely what you're saying, and they can be better in that area. I just think it's too cluttered in there, and they don't have time to throw anything other than underneath. And these guys just aren't winning their routes in this cluttered underneath area of the field.
Let's look at the numbers, David, because you talked about that. Because I want to hear that, how the Cowboys are looking here, and let's put some perspective on this. Because my feeling about this is that coming from where they were, 3 12-win seasons in a row going into this season, having the fourth best odds in NFC of making the Super Bowl, to where they are now, I would put this up there as one of the most frustrating seasons in Cowboys history.
Yeah, and when you, like you say, coming off the 3 straight 12-5, Kansas City was the only team in the league in the regular season with a better record over the previous 3 years. The only team. To come from that, even with the number of veterans you allowed to walk in free agency, with what you had done on the draft, with how you developed guys, with the star players you still had in place on both sides of the ball, there was still a sense that this team may not be as good as the last 12-5 versions, but they played together. A winning nucleus is still in place. This may be like a half step back before you build going forward, but you can still weather this. Has not been the case. Look, they've now lost 5 straight. Everyone's focusing on the 5 straight home losses, where they are a minus 118 in those 5 home losses. But let's take that out of it and just look at the actual losing streak right now is 5 games. There has only been one time in the last 4 decades that a Cowboys team has lost more than 5 straight games. Put that in perspective, Dave Campo had 3 straight 5-11 seasons, and he never lost 5 games in any of those seasons. But there's only been one time in the last 4 decades that a Cowboys team has lost more than 5 games. That was in 2015. That was a year where they had 5 different starting quarterbacks, hit by injuries, much like this season. But here you go. In those 7 consecutive losses were by a total of 59 points in those 7 straight losses. This Cowboys team has lost 5 straight games by 102 points. So their 5 losses are nearly double what, in terms of margin of defeat, that the 7 consecutive losses were back in 2015. Now, you look at 5 losses and stop there. This is the 5th time in franchise history they've had a 5-game losing streak. That doesn't crack the top 5. They've lost 10, 9, 8, 7, and 7. So those are the 5 worst losing streaks. But I'm just saying, when you stop at 5, these are the point margins, minus point margins during those losing streaks. 43, 71, 72, 80, and this one is 102. So this already ranks as the worst 5-game losing streak in franchise history.
And a lot of that's based on the fact that, they can't do anything right? We're seeing obviously we understand the problems on offense. It's easier to diagnose the problems on the offense because they don't have a running game. They didn't have one going into the season, and now Dak's out, and he wasn't playing particularly well while he was here.
Yeah, but you're doing stuff like you've had 2 straight games where you've had a fake punt that has failed to pick up a first down, and you turn the ball over very deep in your territory. You've had 2 straight games where you've lost a fumble where the offensive lineman is on top of the ball, and rather than going down, he tries to pick it up and run with it. As Mike McCarthy said last night, we do not teach our offensive linemen to pick up fumbles and run with them.
Yeah, that was so crazy. Tyler got into that. Maybe he's just frustrated and thinks that, listen, this is something I could do.
Well, that happens when things are going wrong. It's like, well, I'll make the play that will ride us and give us a little momentum.
Yeah.
But I'm going to play the part again of the frustrated fan here and just ask. I mean, that whole litany is all great, right? And we spend all this time breaking stuff down. What are the repercussions? What happens? Because I think fans are like, at this point, okay, well, at least give us Trey Lance. Will we get Trey Lance on Sunday? I think fans are, when are changes going to be made? What are the repercussions for the general manager? Obviously, there are none here. So, what is the fallout from all of this?
Well, the fallout always stops just below where fans want it to go, right?
Right.
And so that's why there's a constant irritation and frustration. because there will be changes. I mean, there's no question there's going to be an entirely new coaching staff in here next year. But then, Kevin, to your point, look at where this team is defensively. They were one of the top defensive teams in the league for 3 straight years under Dan Quinn because he liked the fast, angular players with wingspans that disrupt the passing lanes. You rely on speed. And so what was the Achilles heel on that? Oh, well, you're not good against the run. So Mike Zimmer comes in. He likes a bigger team. He likes it strong up the middle. He likes more size. He likes bigger linebackers. And now they're caught. It's not just this system is a culture shock for this team, and they have to adjust to a new system. It is that they have player profiles that don't fit the new system defensively. And so this is just like, you mentioned back in Mike McCarthy's first year, which was historically the worst defense in Cowboys history under Nolan, that, you've had like 3 different defensive systems now in Mike McCarthy's 5 years. Look, this team is truly a West Coast offense for the first time in franchise history. And this has happened in Mike McCarthy's 5th year. The transition started last year, but this has always been a team that's been the timing offense. And now it's a West Coast offense. So now what do you do in the offseason? Does Jerry look for a West Coast, a coach grounded in West Coast offensive principles to go forward? Does he go back to the timing offense? What does that mean for how the offensive linemen are taught? There's all of these things when you talk about identity. It doesn't just affect the perimeter guys when you're talking about West Coast offense. It is the zone reads and runs that you have for the running backs. It is how the offensive linemen tie their footwork into what the quarterback does. It's much different in a West Coast offense than a timing offense. There are just changes across every part of the offense and defense when you choose to make these wild, philosophical shifts in how you approach the game.
Yeah, I want to say one thing about a personnel matter, and I was so wrong about this. When Eric Kendricks came in the first couple of games, he looked really good. And since then, it's just been a disaster. And I know that last night during the broadcast, they said that Zimmer said, "Oh no, that Kendricks is playing really well." It's like there was one play, a completion last night where Kendricks was standing out there. A player runs past him. He turns around and looks at him, and he's standing perfectly still as the guy ran past him and it was caught for like a first down. And it's like, if you're standing still while the play is going on, you have screwed up. And he's an experienced linebacker, and clearly, as Troy pointed out, there was some lack of communication here. It's like, and he's the guy who's supposed to be running the defense because he's run Mike Zimmer's defense before. That's how bad it has all gotten. That even the people who are well versed in this defense don't seem to get it. And you saw down there at the goal line a couple of times that Mixon got the ball and bounced it outside. There was nobody within the zip code to get him, and how can that be on a play? You really think that he's just going to go plowing up the middle here and there's no chance that he might try to bounce it outside?
I think sometimes you become so frustrated your talent doesn't come through. They are clearly in that point because every athlete in every sport talks about playing free and easy and just how fun it is and the joy of the sport. When it becomes hard work like it is, and you cannot watch this offense now and not think they're scrapping and fighting for just the smallest piece of success. When you reach that stage, it's very difficult for a player's talent and passion and joy and skill to come through to its fullest.
All right. Before we get out of here, and I know this is probably not the right time to do it, but what the heck?
Sure, we'll do it.
What the heck? If you're gonna, so clearly Mike McCarthy's not going to be back next year. That's a done deal now. And to Evan's point about why not just go ahead and do something, then you're just doing it to make the fans happy. I don't really, at this point, it's that you don't have a logical guy. I don't see the point in it. But
I'll give you a logical guy. Why not? No, it's not logical at all. But the Big 12 championship is here on December 7th. Maybe Colorado's coach just wants to stay over and take over the team.
Deion Sanders.
Okay, here's the other one. I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but how do you think Mike McCarthy went to the, should we say, quote unquote, boxing match on Friday? He was at AT&T. You have Michael Irvin there on the big screen lobbying for Deion Sanders to take over as the next head coach, with the current head coach there with his family in a suite watching the
that was going
match.
on? Really? I did not hear
Yes.
that. Oh, my gosh. Well, that's nice.
And Michael Irvin took to X again today to say that I spent time with this man on Friday, and he showed a picture of him and Jerry. I spent time lobbying with this man on Saturday, and he showed a picture of him and Deion. I've still got more work to do. I've got to get this done.
I'll say this. I don't know whether that Deion Sanders has done a great job at Colorado. He did a great job at Jackson State. The question for me, because there's such a small sample size here, is what does he do without his son, Shedeur, as the quarterback?
Or the Heisman Trophy winner.
Or the Heisman Trophy winner, Travis Hunter. Those are two pretty good players. And you're playing in a pretty weak league. But I will say this. If the Cowboys were in a position to draft Shedeur Sanders, first of all, you've still got Dak Prescott. You got a $1 billion cap hit next year. That would all be a disaster. Even if you were bold enough to do that, how would that go over in a locker room where the coach is coaching his son at quarterback? That's fine in college and in high school. I cannot imagine that going over in an NFL locker room.
Yeah.
And Deion's been pretty adamant that he would never be an NFL coach. Now, I understand people can change their views, and there are a lot of things that persuade that. Usually a lot of money will persuade someone to go, well, maybe I looked at this wrong. But he has felt his approach would not go over on the NFL at the NFL level. And he would know because he played on the NFL level and saw what approaches work and what don't. And I don't think he's willing to change his personality to make it work on the NFL level. I tend to believe him when he says he's a college guy. I really do.
I don't know why. Listen, if you can be in college and if it's working for you, and you can make as much money in college football as you can in pro football now.
You retain much more control than you do on the NFL level.
Absolutely.
And it'd be hard for me right now to see Deion doing a lot more. Look, he's probably making more money in endorsements right now as a college coach than he probably could as an NFL coach. So
you're right.
You can't watch one of the games without seeing him 3 or 4 times in the commercials. It's unbelievable. I will say this. All right, so that you threw that out there. I'm going to throw up my guy that I wanted to have the job, and I'm not sure why he doesn't have a job, is Mike Vrabel. I think that's the kind of guy who I thought he did a great job at Tennessee. I can't understand why he's not coaching now. But he may be surpassed now by Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions, who's really done a terrific job with them. And that's not a situation there where they have a really good offensive line, but they got a very mediocre quarterback in Jared Goff, in my estimation. Certainly Dak's every bit as good as Jared Goff. And
they have some outstanding skill players, though.
They do.
Across the board, man.
What's happening with the Lions?
2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end.
They've done a great job of drafting. We can talk about the Cowboys doing a pretty good job in the draft. You look through that lineup, they got first-round draft picks all through it. They've got a lot of really good talent, and that's from years of being terrible. Mm-hmm. So it makes me wonder now if the Cowboys are going to have to just break this down.
Just be terrible for a while. There's your hope.
Be terrible for a couple of years,
So we're all just assuming that Bill Belichick and his 20-year-old girlfriend are going to go to Jacksonville. We're just all assuming that's the deal.
I don't know. I don't know what he wants to do. I don't
think
know if Bill Belichick's the right hire
here. I'm not saying he is either, but I think he's in play here. Yeah. This has gotten so bad. Jerry knows that this is very similar to where he went out of his comfort zone and got Parcells in here because he needed an established football guy to take all of the attention off himself and where this franchise had gone.
He needed credibility.
And he was just concentrating on getting the stadium built. He needed that football credibility again. While there are questions about Bill, look, the questions about Belichick were the same that were on Parcells. The game's passed him got by. Why are you bringing this guy back? Why don't you go more cutting edge? Be on the front end of the surge. Don't come in too late. All of that being said, Belichick brings you a credibility that no other coach would. Now, you mentioned Vrabel. Vrabel is kind of a Belichick light with social skills, right? And so that's attractive on a certain level. A younger guy who's a taskmaster and would demand discipline, but comes across better in packaging than what a Belichick does. So I think both of those guys are in play, and Jason Witten's in the conversation somewhere. I'm just telling you.
Well, and listen,
I'm not
Jason.
saying head coach next year. If you want to talk a package of like him and Belichick and him being an assistant head coach with the idea that the transition goes to him, that is something that a bridge to the future that Jerry would be fascinated by. I'm not saying they've even had those conversations, but just knowing how Jerry Jones thinks and what he's done in the past and his affinity and respect for Jason Witten, you cannot rule him out of the conversation when they're looking at how should we proceed here.
But my one question about Jason Witten is, and of course it's also a very small sample size.
One question about a guy who's never coached at the college or pro level.
Well, that's exactly. Well, no, it is one thing with Jason. He's the world's nicest guy, and I worry about it. To me, if I'm going to pick one thing about Mike McCarthy that I don't like, just one thing, it's going to be that I don't believe there's enough discipline on this team. I don't believe that he enforces enough discipline, that it shows up in the penalties. It shows up in the fact that the body language on players on the field, especially the best players, it shows up in the fact, and this may have to do more with Jerry Jones than it does with Mike McCarthy. But the whole thing about, Zeke Elliott, he's a great player, and it's like, if he's not showing up on time, if he's not doing these things, then he's not a great leader. I don't care how tough he is. I don't care what people say about him otherwise. If he doesn't follow the rules and show everybody that it's important, the old thing was, if you show up on time, you're late. You're supposed to show up at 5 minutes early. That's the deal. And that's the kind of discipline a football team needs, in my estimation, is that kind of thing, and demanding things to be perfect. I've told you that story before about Gordon Wood, the great high school football coach at Brownwood. And he told me one time, when we ran plays in practice, if somebody made a mistake, we ran it again. Somebody made a mistake, we ran it again. It didn't matter until everybody ran the play perfectly, did we move on to the next play.
And that's how we do this podcast, too. And I want everyone to know that.
Mistakes, we throw them out. All right.
We were going to talk 20 minutes about the Cowboys, and we are 31 minutes in.
We're 31. I think we went over. No discipline. There's no discipline. I can't write hurt on you guys. You guys are just out of control.
Throwing my flag.
That's gonna be it for the Cowboys segment of our podcast.
Thank God.
David's got to go. So
I gotta go, man. God.
So David's had enough of the Cowboys. This is bringing his career to an end.
7 more games. 7.
Good luck with that, David.
Yeah.
Welcome to me in 2022 or 2021.
At Texas Capital, we know that the path to greatness isn't for the faint of heart. It's full of chances and opportunities with no promises. We know because we help clients and communities achieve greatness every day. Texas Capital is a full-service financial services firm founded and headquartered in Dallas, Texas. Our customized solutions were built to keep your business moving forward. Please visit texascapital.com to learn more. That's texascapital.com. Texas Capital is the collective brand name for the Texas Capital Bank and its separate non-affiliate banks and wholly owned subsidiaries. For deposit products, member FDIC.
All right, so I was up in the hills last weekend, Evan, to watch Texas and Arkansas resume their rivalry as intra-conference foes in the SEC. Not an overwhelming performance by the Horns. Their defense played really well. They held Arkansas to about half of what they've been averaging on offense. That the Razorbacks are not real good. They've only won 5 games, but their offense has been better this year, and Texas did a really good job of stopping that. They've got some players, and they can compete. But Quinn Ewers simply is not playing well enough week to week, in my estimation, to get them where they want to go. I think they can make the SEC title game because they've got Kentucky and Texas A&M left. I think Kentucky's overmatched, and I think that A&M simply doesn't have enough oomph at quarterback. Now, of course,
enough what?
Oomph.
Oof?
Oomph. They got an oomph, but they don't have enough oomph.
They have an oof, but not an oof?
No, not an oof. Not an oof. I'm not going to call those kids oafs. They just don't have enough at quarterback to really get them over the top. Their defense is pretty good, but probably not as good as Texas defense. If they can get a lot of pressure on Quinn Ewers in that game on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, then something might happen. Because look, against Arkansas, Quinn did not get a lot of pressure and still missed a lot of throws he should have made. That game should have been something like 34-10 instead of 20. So anyway, still some work for Texas to do. I think that Steve Sarkisian knows that. But if I were going to rank the SEC right now, Evan, I'm going to say that and how they're playing right now, I'm going to go with Ole Miss number 1, Georgia number 2, Alabama number 3, Texas number 4.
Yeah, I think it's pointless to try and do a ranking at this point, only because if you'd have told me going into Saturday night or even after the first quarter that you would rank Georgia number 2 when the Bulldogs had not scored a touchdown in 5 consecutive quarters in the SEC, I would not have believed it. And then Carson Beck played 3 incredible quarters, and this team looked really impressive in beating Tennessee. I had Texas and Tennessee playing in the championship game going into last week. And now I just throw my hands up in the air. It's probably going to be the winner of the Texas A&M game against Alabama, but that's still to be determined a little bit. Trying to sort out all those tiebreakers on what would be, I think we would get down to the tiebreaker, which would be overall league record of all the opponents of the teams that are tied with 2 losses. And there's still a lot of maneuverability there. Let's just put it that way. My question is there any way Texas and Texas A&M are so looking forward to the resumption of this rivalry, and with a shot at the SEC championship at stake, the first game for both of them to play in the SEC championship, even though one of them's been in the league for a dozen years, is there any possibility that Auburn on the road or Kentucky presents any kind of a trap game for one of these 2 teams?
Sure. I mean, we've seen that, right? And seen the teams do that. I don't think that Texas is going to play, with the exception of the Georgia game, they play well at home. And so I don't think that Kentucky is going to be a problem for Texas. I think it's possible that Auburn could screw up A&M's hopes. The Aggies have really started to struggle here in the last few weeks. They're just not getting consistent enough play at quarterback, and that's going to be an issue for them going forward. And they've had some injuries as well that have hurt them. But let's hope that game is preserved because that would really be great. It's going to be good enough that the rivalry's back, right? And that's going to be great.
Sure, but I mean, there's actually something at stake too. I mean, and that would be that would only
great.
raise this even more.
Absolutely. So that would really be something to be able to get that. Let's move over and talk about SMU in Miami in the ACC. As we're taping this now, it's before the CFP rankings come out for this week, so we're not sure how everything's going to fall. I would imagine that the top of the board will stay the same. I can't imagine them moving Oregon or Ohio State.
I guess the only question I've got for you that I think would still be intact once the CFP rankings come out is everything that happened in college football this weekend, primarily Tennessee losing, BYU losing. How do those potentially, is there any impact on SMU?
I think that no. I think that the SMU it will still float around 13 or 14, and I think that's okay because they just have to beat Miami, right, in the ACC title game, and if they do that, then they're in.
Well, they've got to beat Miami, but they can, again, the same thing. They're going on the road to Virginia. They cannot be so focused on the ACC championship game that they make a misstep here.
No question about that. But I will say this. I'd make the case that right now, I'm not sure that SMU is not better than Miami. What Miami has going for it is Cam Ward. He's going to be in the top 2 or 3 of the Heisman voting, and I think that's how the committee is voting for them, right? But and I don't really have a huge problem with that because that's the same thing that Colorado is, right? Colorado is going to win the Big 12. There's no question in my mind they will because they've got 2 Heisman Trophy candidates. They might have the 2 top picks in the draft. I mean, you get that kind of talent, especially in a league that's not great, then you should dominate it. So,
right. And Miami's got a great receiver in Restrepo too. So.
He is, exactly. So that's a great 1-2 punch for them, and that's a significant difference. I like Kevin Jennings; he's done a great job for SMU. He doesn't do anything but win, but he doesn't have that kind of talent that Cam Ward does. And so coaches are going to say, play breaks down, something happens. I can count on this guy to make something big out of this. I don't know that this other guy can't. The problem is that I think that. For Miami, I think SMU's defense is a lot better than Miami's defense. So, this is a big time for Rhett Lashley. If he can pull this off, first year in the ACC, if he can win that, it'll be interesting to see. He's under contract with SMU through 2029, but people are going to come after him, specifically in the Arkansas job. If Sam Pittman, it's just hard to watch him limp around on the sidelines.
I believe Arkansas has already gone the route of taking the SMU coach, and that didn't work all that well for them. Arkansas is going to make a deal with the devil and bring Bobby Petrino back and install Bobby Petrino.
I talked to somebody about that over the weekend, and what I got out of that was that there's enough people who are still unhappy with how it ended the first time, and they were fine with that. They were fine with bringing him back as offensive coordinator because he's not the face of the franchise, right? But being head coach again, that's something. And he's 64 years old. Rhett Lashley is from Arkansas. He was a backup quarterback at Arkansas. He's one of their own. The question for me is, would Rhett Lashley want to go back there and be in the SEC, or wouldn't you rather just stay in the ACC where you're a major conference? You got a good chance to win it every year. And I'll tell you what, I'm not so sure that SMU boosters might not fund those NIL collectives a lot better than Arkansas's boosters would.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that. But I think the thing that we have to look here is, right, Kurt Cignetti got an 8-year deal at $8 million at Indiana for going 10-0. That's the kind of money you're going to be talking about if you're going to give Rhett Lashley an extension or if you're going to try and hire him away. Yeah,
he's going to make a lot more money. We're trying to make him money right now. That's what we're trying to do.
What is he making at SMU? Do you know?
It's supposedly it's like around 2.6.
Yeah, so he's gonna more than double his salary. Regardless of what happens.
Absolutely, they need to be doing it right now. Frankly, Rick Hart needs to be making that contract right now. And for all I know, maybe he is. I'll reach out to him and see if that's anything's going on. But
the one thing we haven't, can I just say one thing, one non sequitur on SMU before we get out of here and shut the college football talk down. But the one thing that I thought was interesting that was said over the weekend was Booger McFarland on more than one occasion called SMU the fastest team in the country. And there's something to be said for that. Speed is a weapon, and that might be their best route to getting to the playoff. Is that if they can count on that team speed, maybe it is good enough defense to shut Miami down.
Well, look, here's the thing: when you're a team like, if you're not an SEC team, an SEC power, what we know is that the best teams in the country get the best defensive and offensive linemen. Right? They just don't move around. They all gravitate towards the same teams. And if you can't get those kind of players, then you better be fast.
Yep.
And so that's what Rhett did. I think the genius is, and it's been very undersold, is that Brashard Smith, his running back, was not a running back when he came here from Miami. He was a wide receiver at Miami, a slot receiver. And so he brought him in and he turned him into a running back, and he's been terrific. So that was to me, those are the kind of Gary Patterson-like moves that he would do with personnel. He would see a player and identify something in that player that other people had not identified, and he was making something out. I'm not saying he's making something out of nothing. Brashard Smith was a good player as a wide receiver, but he was able to do that, and that's what Lashley has done, and that's one of the things that's done that for him. And yes, he is probably, I'm guessing, one of the fastest running backs in the country. He'd have to be.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's a great thing. All right, let's move out of college because we want to talk about that fiasco out at Jerry World on Friday. Not the one on Monday night, but the one on Friday, that fiasco, which has drawn a lot of attention, of course. It was the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul debacle, which had gotten a lot of attention, obviously. A lot of people were very excited to think that that Mike Tyson might have something left at 58 to beat Jake Paul, which was ludicrous on the outset.
I don't think anybody thought Mike Tyson had anything left to beat Jake Paul. I think they hoped that somebody would just punch Jake Paul in the face.
Well, yeah, that's true. Though there's a lot of people who bet on Mike Tyson and lost a lot of money on Mike Tyson. Let me tell you, there was a lot of money lost. Because here's the thing about Mike Tyson. First of all, he's 58. He was in the hospital for bleeding ulcers this summer. What anybody thought he would be able to do in that game? Because here's the thing about Jake Paul. He's not a fighter at all. He's got the world's longest windup when he throws a punch. It's terrible to watch. He's a lunging boxer, but because he's tall and because he had a long reach, there was no way he was going to let Mike get anywhere close to him and where Mike could do any damage. And Mike's only desire, I watched the first 2 rounds. Mike's only desire in the first couple of rounds was, I'm going to try to get a couple of punches off here, and after that, I'm just going to hang on.
He was at a gas after the second round. His whole hope would have been to try and charge like a bull, hit him hard, knock him down, and be out of there. After that, I will say this: even with 2-minute rounds, and even though he looked sad. And a little bit pathetic with the knee sleeve and all stiff. There's a testament to being a 58-year-old and standing up in a ring for 16 minutes and staying upright. But nobody paid to see that. People paid to see somebody go down. Nobody went down. There was a lot of clenching. Mike Tyson threw, how many punches did Mike Tyson land? He landed 18.
He landed 18 punches in 8 rounds.
Yeah,
that's pitiful.
It was just sad. And here's the thing that it kind of takes away from, and I will say this for Jake Paul, much as opposed to say Dana White and Don King, Jake Paul is a promoter. But he's willing to allow other people on the card to make actual money. You know, the Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano made money, and they put on a good fight, and he's promoted women's boxing in a positive way. So I will give him credit for that. The Barrios Abel fight, or Ramos fight, was a good fight. And unfortunately, you know, it all gets overshadowed by the fact that we all showed up to watch whether an influencer could beat an AARP member. That's basically what people showed up to watch. And people showed up in millions, to the point where all we got frozen on our screen at home as the Netflix site crashed was a butt shot of Mike Tyson. There's your moon, Jerry. There's your moon.
Evan, are you all right? Wow. Holy cow.
I've been rehearsing that all morning, Kevin.
I'm sure you have. Well, here's the thing about to me is that I saw several boxing writers write, because they're just desperate for something good to happen in real boxing, as opposed to this, UFC mess that we have in today's world, is that this was good for boxing. I'm going to say this: if a 58-year-old man fighting a TikToker is good for boxing, then maybe boxing should die. And I said that as someone who used to love boxing, and I just finally grew out of it. It just part of it was just empathy for these people and what happens to them, but also it's because it's just terrible now. It's certainly in the heavyweight division. It's never coming back.
No, but I will say this, Kevin. I in the heavyweight division, you're right. But I will say this: I would tune in to watch another women's fight. I thought both of those women really went hard and showed a lot of stamina, showed a lot of poise. Look, Amanda Serrano took a headbutt to above the eye, and she was bleeding badly, and she stayed in there and fought for 10 rounds. Was it a 10-round fight?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think that was 10. The welterweights were 12.
But none of that's going to save boxing.
No. But it was good to see. It was.
Well, let's say this: it was certainly better to see than what that mess was, and that's the pitiful thing about it. I think a point was raised, a question during the pre-fight was raised by a Dallas reporter, apparently, when he asked.
We just don't know who the Dallas reporter was.
We just don't know who it was. We need to investigate. He said to Jake Paul, one of the press conferences, "You said you want to be taken seriously as a fighter. When are you going to fight a serious fighter?" And of course he muttered something that was not polite.
Dumbass.
And so that's the thing, is that everybody made it. To me, I got the feeling that people were thinking that Mike Tyson was the only possible person who can finally rid us of Jake Paul. It's like, that's ridiculous. There's 1,000 fighters out there that can beat Jake Paul.
Jake Paul's not going to fight those guys. He's not going to fight Canelo.
No, he's not going to fight anybody who has any kind of reputation or any kind of training as a fighter. Here's the thing to remember about fighters, and I remember this when I was in high school. I was talking to a friend of mine who was a Golden Gloves boxer, and he says, "All right, act like you're going to throw a punch on me." So I kind of loaded up like I was going to throw a punch, and he said, "See, I could hit you twice before you even threw that punch." And that's the thing; their punches all come from their shoulders. That they're not. There's no wind up to a punches, and that's what Jake Paul's doing. The things that he does are
Kevin, stop boring us with boxing technology.
Well, it's a travesty
technique.
It's a travesty what he does out there. If you get him in the ring with that's why the boxing used to be called the sweet science, was because these guys and the people that did it, they were experts in it, and they were trained in it.
That's not why it was called the sweet science. It was called the sweet science because sports writers overwrote. That's why.
No, that's not true. There's a lot of technical stuff that goes on with boxing that is more than people just wailing on each other.
But it has. I mean, that's the thing that made me fall out of love with boxing was that I realized, look, it is a violent sport, and the damage that gets done is too oftentimes permanent. And I'm saying that as we deal with whatever the outcomes of violent hits in football are. So I realize I'm a giant hypocrite, but nevertheless, boxing's dead. I think what we cemented
that's the death of boxing right there on Friday night on the stage at Jerry World. That's the end of boxing as we know it.
But the other grotesque thing that happened on Friday night was, yes, of course, Jerry showed up on the broadcast to crow about Netflix relationship with the NFL, and that's really what Cowboy fans wanted to hear about. Yeah.
Well, and what did he also say? That this was a great broadcast on Netflix, and right when he said that, the screen froze.
Constantly.
Yeah, so that was it. All right, that's it for us. We have really covered the gamut here. It's gone way too long, but we hope that you enjoyed it, and you'll come back next week as we have more to talk about all the different things that have going on, not only in college football, but with these Karma Cowboys.
And all the things we're thankful for, because next week's going to be Thanksgiving. It's going to be the big Thanksgiving episode.
Oh, it's the big Thanksgiving episode. That's right. We're going to have to come up with something we're thankful for.
We'll have our parade of floats.
I like that. Our Macy's Day Parade. Are we going to have a Sports Day float this year in the parade?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think so. Get your big head up there. We can float that.
If Emu the Lemur or Lemur the Emu can get a float, then I guess I can.
Yeah, there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us. So from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.